Welcome, everybody, to the Indie Game Lunch Hour. Today, we're talking with Steve Fox about navigating the fundamentals of the creative process.
The Indie Game Lunch Hour.
In our live magical podcast, we give game developers the chance to hear stories of breaking in from industry experts, as well as directly ask them questions about their areas of expertise in the second half of each episode. You might hear my cat in the background shouting at birds. Please forgive me. This is a mostly unedited recording of a weekly event we host in our Discord Wednesdays at 12 p.m. Eastern Time, so feel free to swing by and join us for the next one. We'd love to have you. You can ask your own questions live. I'm your host, Willem Delventhal, the headmaster of the Indie Game Academy and the self-proclaimed Purple Wizard of Joy. And joining me today is Steve Fox. Steve has been working in the game industry for a number of years on a number of different processes, but most recently, he's the creative director at Space Gnome Studio, which Steve just told me started as a contracting firm and is now going a little bit more legit. Steve, welcome to the show. What are you having for lunch today?
Well, I'm a little bit more on the west side of the U.S. here, so I'm still hitting breakfast. I just finished up a plate of eggs, and I'm taking down some molten lava coffee, basically. So it's thick and hot. It's very strong.
Here's the true, amazing. Here's the truest debate. We're gonna settle it right here and right now. Iced or hot?
Hot coffee, 100%. I can't do that. Not even in the summer. I'll still take hot coffee. So.
Oh man, I'm an iced coffee guy. This is not going to be a good episode. I don't know. This is good.
That's cool. We can end right now if we need to. We'll just go our separate ways.
I appreciate a good hot cup of coffee. I'm drinking hot coffee right now, but iced is definitely my go-to. I just love it. It's more like refreshing. That's what I think. That's my argument.
I think most of the times I've had whatever my daughter's gotten from the coffee shop. So it's got, 57,000 other sparkly ingredients in it. So maybe I just need to try some straight iced coffee.
Yeah, you just do a little iced coffee. You do like a little bit of whatever your favorite milk is, and then like maybe a little bit of sweetener, and that's it. You don't need all the bullshit.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of all the bullshit personally, but
sprinkles
whatever.
And caramel and avoid that stuff.
You do you. If that's your thing, fine.
Yeah.
All right. Well, welcome to the show, Steve. It's awesome to have you on. This is, like I said in the intro, largely a show meant to help people understand others' origin stories in games, because there's so many commonalities that are true for everybody. All of us kind of fell in love with games for one reason or another, often for very similar reasons. We played a game that we loved when we were young or whatever. But also, we all have different stories about how we contribute to the game industry and how we even got here. So I would love to start with the most important question, which is just, Steve, please tell us your origin story.
Sounds great. I feel like I was very lucky to be an 80s kid. So I grew up part of the 80s when games and technology was changing constantly. The next game that came out didn't look like, it looks a little bit like the last version. It was a completely different version, So I grew up in arcades, the smoke-filled arcades, the pool hall, where half, the pool hall, the other half was an arcade. And, you sit around and play Pit Fighter while you're waiting for the metal kids to get off of Street Fighter so you can go play it, I grew up with the arcades and take my handful of quarters down to 7-Eleven just to play whatever game they had out in front of there at the time. So that's something I dearly miss. I dearly miss arcades. You still get nickelcades and stuff like that these days. It's just not quite the same. It was a place where people hung out. It was a place where you ran into other people. Arcades were a great time back then. I got to hit the consoles as they came in. I had an uncle that was really into video games. He grew up playing board games, and so he's got into Commodore 64 and all that stuff when it came out. So my first game I really remember playing was a game called 7 Cities of Gold, which was, where it felt like an early Civilization, what eventually became like Civilization. It felt really like that. So I really fell in love with games as a way to explore other places. I grew up as an artist, so I love doing environment arts. And so for me, even in like games like Grand Theft Auto, when I play them now, I'm not doing missions. I'm running through back alleyways and looking at how they set stuff up, and this is cool. They did this, and how they made this track ring back around this way if you go through here. So I've always been someone that's really dove into the environment and kind of engulfed myself in not necessarily the narrative of the story, but more how the world felt and how the world kind of was living in the game. But yeah, I hit all the consoles. I get Nintendo was the first one that I had of my own. Who didn't like that? We'd go to Blockbuster or whatever the local video store. Even back then, grocery stores even had video rentals in front of them. So I remember trying to rent Super Mario Brothers 3 for weeks until I could finish that game as a kid. So once those hit, I went into high school. So it's kind of a weird time. It was about the mid '90s when I was going into high school. Computers were in homes for the most part, but the internet wasn't what it was by any means today. You know what I mean? It was still early and fresh, so it was an interesting time and place to be. I went to a high school was about 30 minutes away from where I grew up because they had this new program they're trying to do. It was kind of computer authoring. They would bring in doing tutorials and stuff like that, doing art, showing how to do animations. It was one of the only kind of programs in the country. It was really cool. In fact, oddly enough, this is a funny story. What we're doing is our teacher had a brother that was kind of starting up a 3D animation studio, which I'm telling you was early. And so he'd said this stuff that his company was doing all the time. He's like, "Yeah, here's this cool little lamp that's bouncing across the screen that they're doing, and they're working on this new movie about a cowboy and a spaceman." And dude, my teacher's brother was Ed Catmull, so I'm learning all this stuff.
Wow.
And Ed Catmull's brother is like, I mean, we're getting early Pixar stuff coming through, and it was amazing to us because. I mean, we're still doing pixel art and trying to do, like frame by frame pixel animations and stuff we were doing. So this 3D stuff is just crazy. I mean, we had, it was a fun time because again, we were talking about how innovation was happening constantly with games back then, through the 80s and mid 90s. And I mean, Doom came out when I was in high school. And I remember when we were able to land up Doom together, when that multiplayer version came out, we had 4 players in there. Whew, it wasn't going to get any better than that. Yeah, 4 players, we were landing it in school. That was crazy, it wasn't going to get any better than that.
And then the professor saw you shoot a demon and was like, "Oh, maybe we gotta."
They were on top
deal
of
with
it. That was so cool. Is they were totally with it. They were like, "This is really cool," and they were into the technology and everything behind it. So we were one of the first. We were one of the schools that got to test Windows 95, for example, when it came out. So I mean, that was mind blowing compared to 3.1. So it was a really cool time to kind of be around games, be alive with games. I worked for a couple companies in high school, just right out of high school. That did tutorials for companies that wanted to do bring in new employees and they run through tutorials, animations and stuff. So we did a few of those, and a lot of that was animation that I did, where it was drawing it on paper and then scanning it into the computer and then coloring it in Deluxe Paint was the program back then. So that was kind of where I got started in high school. Outside of high school though, I really what I want to do. I went to college and they had one computer in the entire art department that was. They're testing 3D animation at the time. Like I said, it was kind of early. They weren't sure what they wanted to do, and I'm taking graphic design, and they're showing us how to make layers, like physical vellum layers for printing process. I'm like, I know they're already not doing this. Why am I paying money to be taught an old process? It's not even happening now. So I ended up buying an old Gateway computer. Remember Gateway computer, the old cow computers? So I'm buying a Gateway computer and just trying to teach myself the process. So I got a job in a company called Software Etc., which is eventually got out by GameStop. It was a video game company. This is right when kind of N64 was out, PlayStation was out. People were bringing in all their old SNES games they didn't want anymore for real cheap, and so that was fantastic. I walked with a huge collection of awesome games at the time. But yeah, working there and then and building something on my computer, I just tried to learn the process on my own. I mean, like Half-Life came out, which is mind-blowing, and they released a Hammer editor at the time. So it's kind of, I mean, I played around with the Quake editor a little bit and stuff like that. I modded earlier games, but Hammer editor was kind of cool because internet was kind of just early going too. You get on the forums, you can actually talk with people that were at Valve and talk to them about what your problem with it, because it was such a tight-knit community back then. And so, you play around with stuff that Half-Life came out with. I wasn't sure if I wanted to hit the game route, or I was really interested in film. The other thing I'd do besides play arcades is I'd rent every movie down the sci-fi, horror, and foreign film section, because I just loved film. So I worked in film for a little bit as a set designer, a few independent films out here in Utah, because Utah is a really big film hub. I got to, I wasn't sure if those were the hours I wanted to keep all the time, because, you're gone for months, and then, I'm starting a family and stuff like that. So I looked back into game design. Took me a little bit, but I eventually got my first job with a company called Sensory Sweep, which is out here in Utah. They were one of those companies that brings in just IPs from like Hollywood and stuff and spits out just a bunch of crap games. I was there for about 2-3 years. They started having some serious financial problems where their main investor or main contract pretty much wasn't getting the contracts anymore. And so all of a sudden employees weren't getting paid out of nowhere. They weren't telling us we weren't getting paid. But when everyone shows up to cash their check, and all of a sudden half the people get turned away because the number things started getting figured out there. So
that's a little upsetting. How did you land that first job, by the way? Because that's often where people are the most curious. How did that first game job happen?
Okay, and we'll get into part of creativity part. But part of what I like to do is I always like to take jobs where I could learn something I was really interested in. So, I took a job, I built machine guns for a couple of years as part-time because I wanted to learn how to shoot and build machine guns. I mean, Uzis, AK-47s, all full auto stuff. I learned to build all that stuff because it would sound interesting. I took another part-time job at a local Japanese cafe, this little mom and pop Japanese cafe that I really love their food, so I wanted to learn how to make their food. So I worked there for part-time for 6-7 months. During that time, though, a lot of guys from the game industry would come in for lunch or whatever. And so I started chatting with them, made friends with them, stuff like that. One would tell me, hey, we got an opening at our studio. We got to come check it out. So that's how I got in. It's just that social aspect of talking with people, networking, and I made it. Saw these guys enough where they come in, I'd recognize their faces, chat with them, and eventually I didn't get landed with one of their studios, but one of the other studios that came in is who I ended up landing that job with. So I went in there; they were just expanding at the time, and so got a job. Again, it helps that I was able to show that I had passion for games. That's one of the big things that got me hired a couple of times was my passion, and showing that I've got passion for those games, and then. Just the fact that I've got a diversity of different things I've tried. When I was, playing with the hammerheader and stuff like that, I'm just doing level design. I'm not just doing environments. I'm trying to figure out how I can do everything. I'm scripting. I'm figuring out. I hate programming. Trying to figure out how to do programming. That's why I've been playing around with Unreal and Blueprints a lot lately. I'm loving that visual programming stuff because I'm just digging into all those numbers and code. That's not my thing. But yeah, just that diversity stuff. So really a lot of it was networking. So. Get out there and meet people. I know it's not everyone's favorite thing to do, but really with all the studios I've worked at, the job's more likely going to go to somebody that we know before we bring in someone that we don't know. So, because if someone says, "Oh, we've got a job opening for an environment artist," I've got 20 environment artists I could recommend right now. So it is important that you get out there and you network quite a bit. So
amazing.
But anyway,
and then he wound up creative director at ModStorm was one of the big next steps as well.
The big next step actually was WildWorks. So I came in there. So Century Soup was closing down. People were jumping ship. Salt Lake does not have very many studios. I don't know why. There's a huge hub here. The University of Utah is one of the biggest gaming programs in the U.S. Fantastic place, but there's just not that many studios here. And so it was pretty much when the studio's closing down, it was like 300 people looking for the handful of jobs that were available in the area.
Yeah.
Sounds familiar. I went. Yeah, serious. I went and talked to my friends who were at that other studio. They were actually the guys that came to that restaurant I worked at a lot, that little cafe. And so I talked to them and said, "Hey, you got anything opening?" And they said, "Yeah, we're getting ramped up for a new project right now." So I went and talked with them, and I didn't even get home before I already had an offer in my email box. So they said I was one of the quickest interview to hires that they had at that time. So what was really cool about WildWorks, at the time they were Smart Bomb Interactive. They're just wrapping up a few Xbox games, like arcade games. But they're looking to kind of build something to take over Club Penguin. So, because that was the big moneymaker at the time, the big kid social network. And so I was lucky enough to come in at ground level. I worked with the CEO directly. His name is Chris Johnson. I worked directly with him to help build a proprietary in-house engine. It's all Flash-based stuff. So the game we're working on, Animal Jam, was all Flash-based, web browser. Not have to download all that kind of stuff. So I was able to work with him to help get this proprietary engine up and going. And then basically, we started building that game from there. Build these big social rooms. We eventually had a big adventure system, which was a lot of fun to work on. I was part of that team. We ended up with 127 million users. It's a huge game.
Wow.
We had comic books and costumes and toys and all that stuff in stores. So it was a really neat experience. I was there for about 10 years, and to watch that game grow as big as it did, and see it from the early concept phases and see what worked and didn't work. When we built the adventure system, we ended up with a huge 30+ room adventure system where each adventure needed to take about 30 minutes. But because it was a kids game, we didn't want to run around do hack and slash type stuff. To me, that's a little bit lazy gameplay. If it's like, let's just make a dungeon crawler, hack and slash, and that's it, quick. So we needed to figure out something else to do. So what was really cool is we made everything puzzle based. So, we had to, every adventure we did, we had to increase the difficulty of puzzles a little bit, but still, bring back some of the old puzzles that kids could, I remember this one, I'm smart, And so that was really cool. And I really loved that as a creative process because, again, we couldn't just conform to hack and slash or this or that. We tried other little things, but we had to get really creative with our puzzles and make them fresh and feel new and inviting to ways to trap, NPCs and stuff. So
one of my favorite times working as a designer in my entire career is working at Lumi Kids, which was a subsidiary inside of Lumosity, where they made kids games for 2 to 6 year olds. And first of all, just the constraints there were like fascinating and interesting. Like trying to build stuff for people that couldn't read was one of the most interesting challenges that I still talk about sometimes. And just overall, just overall, like I'm sure you had some of these experiences. The joy of delivering something to somebody who's younger is just like is palpable. Somebody who is like the way that they feel and the way they express and the way that they get excited or just completely don't care.
Yeah,
or just
absolutely. It is true. I worked in education a lot. I used to teach art to kids back when I was in high school. I go to elementary schools and teach a lot of art. And it's kids have this wild imagination. They get really excited about things that they really, really like. And there's nothing. The first time we put Animal Jam in front of these kids is to watch them interact with each other and the things they did and play with each other is fantastic. And yeah, it's true. It's great to watch. But so I was there for 10 years. I left there and we had the previous CEO from there, Chris Johnson. He was there for just a few months until I left. He called me up and said, "Hey, I'm working on this new project called ModStorm." And so it's this new project, it's pretty much a Roblox. He went for called Penguin the first time around. This time he's trying to go for Roblox, And so he's building an editor again called ModStorm, and looking to go into beta here in the next few weeks. Actually, it's been I'm working with him on and off for 5 years on this project. So it's all again we came. I helped him work on this web-based engine. And then it's also like a catalog for games. So like Roblox, where you go in and build your games, and then you can play them. The cool thing about this though is everything is web based. So there's nothing you download. There's no programming or anything involved. There's all just parameters and sliders and all this cool stuff on the side. Really easy to use, really nice to use. And the best part is when you want to publish your game, all you have to do is send a URL to anybody, whether they're on their PC, Mac, tablet, phone, even VR. It works on VR. It's incredible to build these games on this thing. Drag and drop. I mean, I could build a first-person shooter in like 5 minutes if I just drag and drop a few things, put a few things, and I can be on VR. Send you the URL, and you can hop in instantly. There's nothing you have to download. You're just in that game instantly. So we've been parading it around to a few conventions here and there, just to kind of get people's reactions. And kids are fantastic because one person's playing the game on VR or on a computer. You have another kid on a little tablet, just showing them how they can make their own game. They'll drag it in fire trucks and little buildings, and then you tell them, "Hey, you want to try this in VR?" And they're like, "Oh, no way!" And you show them that instantly. They're in their game in VR, like, "Look at my fire truck, and I'm driving it around." And it's really cool to see that and see how excited people are because like you say too, we're both non-game developers. We're both people wondering, where do I go? How do I get in there? How it seems daunting. It seems hard. It's a huge thing. Make a huge giant game, and everyone's looking at. I can't make Final Fantasy VII. It's like, you don't need to make Final Fantasy VII. You can make a fire truck game where you just drive around the city, And so it's really cool to see these kids and other people. There's adults too. They're just they're dragging stuff to the school. And how do I have to download for this? How much does this cost? No, it's free. Send it to your friends, I'm trying to push it so as a D&D, like a Dungeons and Dragons type thing, where you can build your little RPG and then you're kind of in God mode, changing stuff as your players are going through the game. So so I've been working with him on and off. The thing with that is really just trying to build a vast catalog of games there. So that's what I really enjoyed about it is the diversity of games that I can build, because he's pushing out to investors and this and that, and plus he wants a wide catalog of games for when he opens it up here for beta. There's a lot of different stuff that they can showcase and do with the engine. Wow. So that's been a fantastic project I should work on.
Yeah. Wow. Steve, you are probably one of the fastest talkers in the entire Wild West. I feel like I just learned so much about you and your history. And I think that I mentioned before I asked you for this origin story that one of the things that we get is there are similarities in every one of these stories, and there are differences in every one of these stories. The thing I think I want to call out most from your story is exactly the topic episode, which is that creativity and, searching for that creativity and pursuing that creativity, largely, at least it sounds to me, above all else. Like your process, what it sounds like to me, what I received there is your entire career has been, that sounds cool, I want to go find out how to do that. And then you experiment with it, and you play with it, and you just sort of find the joy in it. Like, it is really clear to me, like you talked about that interview where you landed the interview by the time you got home. I think, from my perspective, my guess is they felt this energy. You probably got in that interview, and you were like, "Oh man, let me tell you about all this cool stuff," and I researched this, and it was like so cool. And they probably felt that. And the thing is that I think some juniors don't quite understand that energy, that excitement, that enthusiasm is a huge part of why people hire you. Yes, you need the technical skills. Yes, it helps if you have referrals. Yes, like if you've worked on past projects, of course that helps too. But when you get in that room and you're genuinely excited, and it can't be fake, it needs to be like actually just, I'm going to focus and talk about why I'm here, why I'm into video games, why I'm in this interview, like why I'm excited about this potential project. That is something that interviewers feel and get excited for and want in their company because it pays dividends. You can feel that at the other end of the product. And that kind of person is also somebody who's going to discover something for your product that nobody else will. So I think that already is a big part of the lesson, at least from my perspective, that we can deliver the audience. I'm curious if you agree with me.
No, I do agree. First of all, when you bring someone on a project, you're going to be hanging out with them for, you like to say 8 hours a day, but it's going to be like 10 hours a day, at the very least. So it is true. You want to bring in people that you feel comfortable with, you feel like they're excited about the project, you feel like they're going to bring something to the project. I do agree with that 100%. And I do tend to talk fast because there's only so much time we have in a day. There's so many things I would try and get done. So
pack more life in.
Yes, exactly.
So I'm curious, what is the actual topic that you gave us? So for those who may not know, we actually ask for the topic of our podcast episodes from the guest. We will sometimes workshop it with them a little bit, but for the most part, it is decided by the guest. And you decided upon navigating the fundamentals of the creative process. So I'm curious, what are the fundamentals of the creative process, Steve?
Well, it's not as simple as just say, here, you just take these 5 steps, you're the most creative person on earth.
But why? That makes the best sound bites.
It does. And unfortunately, I think that's just it, is you're conforming to data at that point. Oh, these are the steps I need to take, then I'm going to be creative now. And I think data, honestly, is the bane of creativity. I feel a lot of what we've come into now is a data-driven game development. And I think that's why we're seeing so much of the same stuff just being repeated over and over and over and over again. Really, the fundamentals of creativity is, you're taking things that and ideas you have, and you're combining them to make something better. You're taking like, oh, I really like this game, and I really like bananas. Let's combine them to make this really cool, banana game, whatever. So the way that you get those ideas to combine them is you need to get out and you need to build those ideas. You need to kind of be an observer and experience things. You go skydiving, whatever you want to do. But even something as simple as when I go out at a restaurant, I'm kind of observing how things work. I'm observing how the kitchen staff is doing their stuff. I'm observing the cooks. I'm observing other patrons and stuff. It's something I'm always looking at. I'm always, get your head up. A lot of people are sitting there looking at their phones, and they're just, even if you're in a dentist's office, you're sitting there just on your phone doing whatever. You're missing out on a whole bunch of things that you're going to be able to use and collect for your creative library that you can, use to build other things, that you can build to build other things that will give that aha moment, because things will just pop into your head and just connect sometimes. So that's my biggest thing, is just get out, observe, learn new things, build your skills. Like I talked about, I took a lot of jobs that because I wanted to learn something. It sounds cool to know how to cook, that Japanese food I learned to cook. I learned how to cook their teriyaki sauce, and it was the best teriyaki. That restaurant is no longer around, but that teriyaki sauce still is. I took that job to build guns because I wanted to learn how guns work and and it was really cool to go out and test fire machine guns all day. So build your experiences, build your skills. I know a lot of people now talk about, I don't age, I level up type stuff. Really think of it that way. I tried to teach that to my son when he was younger. I was like, man, you're watching your video game avatar earn so many skills. You need to yourself build those skills. I mean, one of my big aha moments is where I really wanted to start focusing on is when Sims came out. I think it was about 2000 or something. This is when I was still working at a video game shop, but I remember sitting in my chair, just sitting back, watching this avatar learning a mechanical skill. He's just sitting in a chair learning a mechanical skill, and I thought, why am I not learning these mechanical skills? I installed that game immediately. And that's when I started pursuing my film stuff a bit there. So, so yeah, build those skills. There's a few other things you do is take a notebook everywhere. I've got a little tiny notebook just because things will pop into your head wherever you are. I mean, you'll be in the line at the grocery store, you'll be driving down the street, you'll be at the park, whatever. Something will pop into your head. You need to get it out and write it down, because chances are there's a good chance you'll forget it, or maybe not quite remember it the way it was, or maybe like I remember part of it, but what was that catch that I really liked about that? So try and take a little book. This is a little dollar notebook you get at the grocery store, or whatever. Just keep that in your back pocket, your purse, the glove compartment of your car, or whatever. That's a really important one. creativity hits all the time, anywhere. It's not. It's where I'm looking for. It's not constricted where it's going to come at you. You'd be sitting in church or whatever. You'd be sitting at a funeral, and something might pop into your head. So always keep that with you. Another one is to get away from your project. Um, creative blockage is kind of like writer's block. If you're sitting there staring at your book, staring at your screen, saying, I need to force myself to be creative. Now, that can work. And again, because creativity works differently for everybody. So I'm kind of giving you the fundamentals of what works for me. But being in front of my computer is the worst thing that I can be when I'm trying to figure out something. Just sitting there flipping through the same Google images or this or that, And so get out, go on a walk. My favorite thing to do is actually go on a drive. I'm currently in central Utah, which is great because it's beautiful red rock deserts and stuff out here. So I can go on that drive. I can throw on music. I tend not to listen to music with words. I'll listen to stuff like Harold Budd or Brian Eno, something like that. Because I have to listen to someone whine about their, losing their girlfriend or something, and or I'm not singing along to the Talking Heads or something, So I just go on a drive, and it's not like I'm forcing myself to come up with ideas when I'm driving. It's just eventually your mind wanders, and you need your mind to wander. I think not enough people
kind of giving yourself the opportunity.
Exactly, yeah. And I don't think people allow their mind to wander. They're constantly trying to have something in front of them. I mean, and I don't blame them. The world is trying to keep us, entertained constantly, and everyone's trying to vie for our attention all the time and keep us affixed to, those 10-second videos you're flipping through constantly. So you really need to just get away from all that stuff. You need to keep your head up. You need to avoid those screens, and you just need to get out and try something different, try something new. Let your brain relax. I mean, I do a lot of cooking. I love cooking. Going up and just cooking, spending 6 hours to make Sunday dinner that lasts 15 minutes as everyone eats it. For me, that's therapeutic, and for me, my mind wanders that whole time, and I think of some ideas. I've got that notebook right there where I can jot stuff down if I need to, So those are the three biggest things. If I have to throw in one more of it, it is just going back to don't design around data. I feel like once data collection has taken over the last 20 plus years. People are really affixed to data as being what they should build around. Don't do that. I mean, of course, you're not going to want to make a Western movie right now because you're probably not going to make any money. But at the same time, go with what you enjoy doing. I mean, like we talked about passion again. You're going to be more creative with something you're passionate about. So try and make that game you want. I mean, it is daunting to try and make a huge RPG like that, but you don't need to start that way. Think of like going back to Final Fantasy VII. I spent so much time inside that arcade that had all those little mini games in it. Think about some games within your universe or something you could build. Being creative is even taking that if you're doing a Pong tutorial, how can you push that Pong game a little bit more? Not necessarily changing the game design function, but even how could you change how the graphics work? Just play with things, experiment a little bit with things, and sometimes you get those happy accidents that happen to you. That's another thing that I going back to I want to work in movies. I really want to go into practical effects because I loved blood spurting out of a fake arm and this or that, and there was always those weird happy accidents that would happen. Like, I mean, we've all heard the story of Jaws and how Jaws became the movie it is because the shark didn't work, Yeah. And then once I got into to high school and college and wanted to start kind of doing that practical effects, that's when computers were taking over. And so all of a sudden everyone had these picture perfect zooms and this and that. And that's why, Marvel movies these days just feel like you're watching a 2.5 hour video game cutscene because that's basically what it is, so... But yeah, avoid using data if you can. Build with passion. Build something you want to build. You'll be more likely to finish it. You'll be more likely to enjoy it. You know what I mean? And you won't feel like you're slogging through work outside of your work. So,
I love it. So it's funny. You were like, well, it's hard to just like reduce creativity into like the 5 things, the BuzzFeed article. But so I have 6 takeaways. I have 6 tips now from the mouth of Steve Fox. I'm curious if you agree with all these. So here's what I feel like I got from that. Number 1. Combine the things you love. That's a nice, easy tip. And is something I feel like I am learning as a designer more lately. It is so much easier to start from a recognizable point. Somebody recently was telling me that they can fund projects. They can find producers. They can find, not producers. What am I trying to say? Publishers. That's the word. They can find publishers for projects much easier if the pitch is, it's this game except X. So instead of just like saying something totally new, inventing something totally new, it is here's the groundwork, here's where it's starting, and we're changing it this way, even if it's
It's
just
like
graphics, whatever it's
Pokemon
called.
with guns is a new one, right? Yeah.
I've never heard of a game like
Well,
that before
how-
that made $100 million in 4 days.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Yeah. Number two. So number one, combine the things you love. Number two, be an observer and experience things. There's a wonderful book. I read it ages ago now, so I'm a little more hesitant to recommend it because I don't know. Younger Willem was an idiot. But the book, The Art of Learning by Steve Watskin, I think is his name. But you can look up The Art of Learning. Okay. Talks a lot about combining skills and experiences that you may not have expected. So he was a Tai Chi push hands champion, which is a martial art, and then he was also a chess grandmaster. And he talks a lot in the book about how those two things informed each other, inspired each other in ways that you wouldn't have expected. He'd be punching somebody in the face, and then he'd be like, "Oh, that chess move, yes, like that's perfect." So there's ways that different life experiences contribute that you may not expect. And then there's also literal ways. There's the famous story that The Sims happened because Will Wright was on a flight and looking down and being like, it'd be so cool if I could just like control all of this from a video game. And then The Sims was born. So number two, be an observer and experience things. Number three is to set learning as a primary objective. And that I feel like is maybe one of the biggest things I'm feeling from you, Steve.
Yes.
You're just curious all the time and you want to go like understand how stuff works, and then you apply that in unexpected ways in other areas of your life, and you don't do it like so many people do it forcefully. And what I mean by that is they're like, oh, I have to go learn, I need to put in time to learn. That is not what I experience from you, at least in this talk. What I'm experiencing from you is, oh man, I'm gonna go find out how that works. You're getting pumped about it, you're getting into the enthusiasm.
Yeah, just
Number
one
four
thing
is
just on that is,
yeah.
I was gonna say, is just don't
Yeah.
get comfortable. If you're comfortable, you're gonna be behind in development. So always be learning, always try and find something new to play around with. So, and it should be exciting. You should be excited to try something new. So
I love that. Number four, take a notebook everywhere. Number five, get away from your project. Just go for a drive. I love that. And number six, don't design around data. Make the game you want. That one's an interesting one. I feel like there is a line in which data is valuable, but also I totally get it. Like if you're just looking at the numbers, one of my previous jobs that I won't mention, like I couldn't get anything approved unless I had numbers to back it, and it was infuriating because I was like, I just know this is going to be fun. That's my data.
I agree.
Is what it is.
Sometimes you really want to go with that gut feeling because you just know things will work. You know what I mean? But it's like, but it coming from the executive side or whatever, being creative is more risky. It is for them, and so that's where you got to kind of balance that risk and reward. So.
I love that. All right, so I have taken enough of your time. This has been a really interesting introduction to the creative process and your story. I'm going to bring Rick on stage as our first community question. Rick, would you like to kick us off?
Yeah, this has been a really great talk and story so far. I'm curious, in your journey, who have your most important partners been, and what roles did they play?
That was a good question. In my video game journey specifically, the CEO I worked with at WildWorks, Chris Johnson, has probably been the strongest. So he brought me into that project, and instantly I was working with him to build that proprietary engine. And then I was working with all the team leads for the like art, audio, stuff like that, to bring that stuff into the engine and then get it pushed out. So he was to me because he showed me, he trusted me enough to put me in that kind of position when I was only about 3-4 years deep in game development. But he's also it also gave me a chance to see all the sides of development. So I mean, I've already done a little bit of audio, I've done a little bit of this and that myself. But being able to see how all that works and then being able to collect that and put that in the engine and get that into the game was a huge part of me being able to go from the start to the finish of development every 2 weeks, because we had a 2-week milestones, and we're pushing new content out every 2 weeks. It's a live service game. And then working with him outside of WildWorks with ModStorm, again, it's just he's shown me how a CEO works, how talking with investors works. Different parts of the process, because a lot of it's just me and him and one or two other people he brings on board at a time. And so being able to jump in and do the audio myself and then get that integrated into the game, being able to do the GUI myself and then get that integrated into the game. Same with NPC conversations, everything. It's been working with him has probably been one of the biggest he's been one of the biggest influences in my career because he's given me the chance to do so much in the industry. So
Put you in a position to really spread your wings. That's
absolutely,
that's
and
cool.
yeah, and that's what I like doing. I really like being a big part of the process. I think that's why. I mean, I've had chances to go to some large studios, especially ones with WildWorks, because they're so successful. There's a lot of people trying to pull people out of that studio. But I really like the AA and the indie studio stuff because it gives you a chance to wear more hats and do a lot more, and you have a lot more control over your part of the process. So
Amazing. Thank you, Rick. I am gonna call up. I have lost them. Emian, are you still here? Where'd you go? There you are. My bad, Emian. All right, I'm gonna call you up on stage to ask your question next. Emian.
Hi. So let me get my question. Let me get my question down. Um, so how would you deal with the idea that sometimes beginner lessons like YouTube tutorials will take a little bit longer for you to absorb, even if the same lesson has been taught to you in multiple ways, in like various different ways, and you still can't seem to get it?
what do I do in that case? I keep digging around or playing around with stuff. Okay, for example, recently I've been playing with Unreal. I was trying to get the textures for the landscape. I saw it was really cool. You can take a rock, you bring it in, and the textures for the landscape will blend into the model almost to make it feel like it's not just sitting on top of everything. But I'm also building a snow level in this, and so I worked with blueprints to get the snow to land on top as well. Well, I did one tutorial, one YouTube tutorial to try and get one thing working, and another YouTube tutorial to get another thing working. But once I had them both together in the same blueprint, that was just not working. And so at that point, what I did is that's where you take your experience to start playing around with things and what you think might work and what won't work. So what it is, I just started playing with bringing a few of these things. I watched a few other tutorials that some were from Unreal 4, for example. Some were just done by other people, and they all set up these textures differently. They all did everything a little bit differently, but you can kind of pick and choose a little bit things from each one that you say, oh, this might work on this, so I go and try it. This might work on another one, and go and try it. Dude, I'll spend all day with a 15-minute tutorial sometimes trying to get it to work and tweak it the way I want it to work. So really, the best way I can tell you to do is just keep playing with something. If you're really having a hard time, I mean, I look at what the Game Academy here has, and it looks like they've got a fantastic support group. Just reach out to people. People will be more willing to help you if you're not quite. I mean, those YouTube guys, they don't always hit their comments, but there's got to be other platforms you can reach out to get that help with a problem here and there that you're looking for. Again, it goes back to what we're talking about, how I first got my job, and it just goes back to networking. You should always be networking. Build that group of people that you can that can help each other out and give each other answers or ideas or mentor each other, in different places where they need it. But yeah, that's the biggest thing is keep trying through it. I mean, I think I went through about 6 or 7 different tutorials just to get that texture blend before I found one that made sense to me that I could start working with. So it's a treasure hunt out there, a treasure hunt trying to find a needle in a haystack of information. So
Amazing. I think
Thanks for answering my question.
yeah, absolutely. I'd love to throw in a little bit on that one. I think I think one of the important things to remember is maybe 2 parts. Number one is give yourself a break. It's okay. There's things that just take more or less energy to learn for different types of people. I think that which goes into my second point, which is everybody's going to learn a different way, and then also everybody's going to learn different things. So there's stuff here that Steve was just getting super pumped about. Steve would go learn, but I'm sure there's stuff, Steve, that you're totally not interested in learning. And if you tried to force yourself to learn it because you felt like you had to or whatever, it would be difficult for you. So obviously, there's certain skills that we do need to learn to do various jobs. But I think part of the trick of niching yourself and figuring out your own sort of unique talent and unique way to contribute to the industry is finding those things that you really want to learn, and that makes it so much easier to learn. And then, yeah, give yourself a break. If you're struggling, try a different approach. I like what you're saying, Steve, which is just try to find other people because they're going to be able to give you that closer, more intimate learning experience. And always good to network too. Always good to have other people. All right. I think if I'm hearing that right, I'm not actually playing the sound because it's too loud and I keep forgetting to replace the sound. It's time for the question of the day, where we ask a question of the audience to reiterate one of the most important points that we received from Steve without scrolling up, because Rick very conveniently wrote it down for us. Give us 2 of the 6 creative tips that Steve gave us. Mark gave us 1, take a journal everywhere, and drive. Drive is very close, but I would say that that is not the actual tip. That is an example of the tip. So, Mark, you're going to have to give me more. Color Optimist, combine what you love your mind. I think Color gets it. I hope, Color, you didn't copy and paste that was all written out, but I'm going to give it to you. Color, you get 3 House Cup points. Let us know which house, I'm assuming it's Rogue, given your banner, you would like those House Cup points to go to. All right, we've got a couple more questions. Rick, you're still on stage. Would you like to ask another question?
Yeah, so I liked how you talked about experimenting with different ideas, and I'm curious, when picking a project to kick some time into, what does your process of finding the concept look like? Is there market research, or does that go against your data-driven philosophy? And or is it just what the team wants to make? Like, what does that look like?
Oh, that's a good question. I have a wide, I want to use the word plethora of ideas, to build on. So I've got a few things, already that are always stewing in the background. That's one thing that's real important about your ideas is give them time to kind of grow in that petri dish. You know what I mean? So I've got a few projects. For example, we're working a little bit on we really love playing around with VR. So we're working on a VR kind of zombie shooter type game, whatever. And we had our own niche. We had a creative take on it, but I read an article, not too long ago that someone the headline said, "Stop making shooters for VR already." I'm like, it's probably true. There's a really saturated market. And so although it was a fun project we were playing around with, it wasn't too serious a project, but so yeah, it's kind of true. It is a saturated market. Maybe I don't want to jump in that ship right now. I've got some other ideas I can push with. I've got ideas for horror games that I'm working on, that I've been working on for quite a few years. Based off some of the older games that I grew up enjoying. Which is something I want to push is the fact that we all have those games that we enjoy playing. We kind of want to replicate those games. I encourage you not to replay those games when you're trying to kind of replicate what you remember from them, because you'll kind of skew your memories and you'll start like, oh, I don't remember it was like this. Oh, it was like this. It didn't kind of play the same. And just to build off those memories and that nostalgia you have for those games, because that's kind of what drew you to those games in the first place. So a lot of that creative process, I've got notebooks. I've got them sitting back here. Each one of these notebooks is a different project, And so
I did the same thing.
Yeah, and so it's like I don't want to. If I'm having a hard time thinking about Project A, for example, that's no problem, because I've got some festering that's been festering for Project B, so I'll just jump on Project B for a little bit and I'll play around with that and spit out those ideas. And in the meantime, sometimes where I'm ever stuck or what I'm stuck on in Project A will just pop in my head again, because I'm pulling myself away from thinking about Project A, and so my mind's kind of free to wander on that a bit. So really, my process with it is. First, I kind of feel like, what kind of game do I want to play? What kind of games do I like playing? What are some cool kind of IPs, or how can I make this kind of new or fun? And then how can I take that and put a twist on it, a unique twist on it that can make it stand out from the other ones? So I'm not just like another Castle Crashers clone or another Stardew Valley clone, or so we're gonna see a whole ton of Pal World clones here soon. I have a feeling. So.
Yeah. I can't wait for the body horror version of Pal World. It'll be exciting.
It sounds like you're trying to distill the essence of what you're trying to recreate, and then not allowing it to get too explicit and specific.
Yeah, exactly. Don't. There is a way that you can over perfect a good thing. So try and take what you have is good. Don't try and get. As an artist, an environment artist especially, I could spend 100 years on one painting just trying to get every leaf just perfect. But there's a time we need to put aside and say, hey, this is actually really good how it is. I don't need to go into that. And sometimes you can, again, over perfect it and make it, not fun. So yeah, just kind of take the essence of what you like, take what you enjoy, take what you want to make, and build a little bit on that. But don't get too crazy. don't make it too rough or too in detail. So it's kind of keep that 2-minute elevator pitch or something, or that 1-minute elevator pitch in your head as your overall game design. So,
love that.
Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. We have Petunia up on stage. Petunia, would you like to ask your question?
Hey, how are you guys? Hey,
Fantastic.
have you had a project that had to be dropped, and what were the signs that you had to focus your energy on another project?
Yeah, contract stuff, you get things dropped a lot, just people run out of money or whatever. And so then you just move on to another contract. As far as from in the studio, there's been a couple times. The first year I worked out, I probably worked on 5 or 6 games. That was Century Street, the one that closed down. Probably worked on 5 or 6 games. Only one of them I have my name attached to that actually shipped, and that was for some background images I drew and put together for the user interface, because that day that needed to be done, the user interface artist was sick. So of all those projects I worked on, only one of them actually got out, and it was just kind of a fluke that my name was even on that, because I had to do a few images for it. So that one was kind of weird and frustrating, because I left that job with a bunch of unreleased projects. So I was like, oh, I worked on this for 5 years, I got nothing to show for it, type thing, which is frustrating. But with Animal Jam, a big one is I was brought in to work on that adventures team. There's only 3 or 4 of us that are working on that. And we spent a year coming up with ideas for how we want this adventure to go. We started out first with like a Pokemon style card game thing, which could have been great for monetization, because we could have sold packs, outside of the game, like real physical packs. It's kind of cool, but it really wasn't clicking right. It didn't feel right. So again, then we tried some other ideas. We looked at the hack and slash a little bit, like we talked about, but like I said, it felt lazy. We worked on that for a few months, trying to figure out a way that we even talked with National Geographic a bit. And they're like, oh, yeah, we don't want hack and slash. We don't want animals to go around, killing other things. And so, again, that made us push to the puzzle-based stuff. So we had these other games that we had built. The whole card game was built. We had that working. We had the whole system down, scrapped, put aside. We had the other ones that kind of a hack and slash type bend stuff, scrapped, put aside. And so, we moved on to, you got to find out, well, what will work. So when things aren't working, kind of figure out why aren't they working? Why can we not use these? What's not, what's the hang up on them? What's unfun about them? What makes them feel like a drag rather than a fun experience? And then, just try and take your next version and improve upon those, or figure out a way to fix those problems. So,
all right, awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Petunio. Yeah, I think like something that's worth saying is game development is iterative, and you will kill far more babies than you raise. Far more babies than you raise. And that is a good process. That's a fun process. Some people get really upset when they go do a playtest and everybody hates it. But that's actually a really exciting, wonderful moment, because you go, awesome, here's 10 ways that this game doesn't work. Now I'm closer to something that does. All feedback is good feedback for the most part, unless somebody's like being intentionally inflammatory or something like that. But for the most part, game development is about killing babies. So when projects aren't working, I would say it is largely obvious, by the way. People will just say like, yeah, I didn't really get it. Play testing and user testing is one of the main ways that you'll get it, and having other people play the game that aren't you. And then as they say that to you, make sure you listen. Not all feedback is worth listening to per se, but all feedback is worth considering at the very least. All right. For the final question, I'm going to call Easy D up on stage. There we are. Who is curious about basically breaking in. The question we're all curious about. All right, Easy D.
Testing.
Hello, we got you.
All right. Good morning, guys. So yeah. What Will said, that is true. So I have had a vision for gaming since I had the first console put into my hands. So from the time that I was a kid to graduating college, that's been my vision. And so what I was curious about was this. So Steve, you mentioned your journey into the industry and everything like that, and how you say you started at a restaurant, and then some guys from the gaming company came in, and you networked with them and everything. So my I guess my overall question would be, so how does one go about trying to find companies or employees from those companies in order to network and try to see what I can develop with them, so that way I can get my foot into the company?
Yeah, absolutely. So going to events is a big one. Like IGDA was a International Game Developers Association. They do their game jams all the time. I know a lot of the people that head those up are usually people that work in studios that are kind of overseeing that stuff. Those are great because you hop in with a bunch of people. You're there for a weekend together. You're making games together. You're network. You're interacting, and you're meeting people right away that are part of game development. Try and go to trade shows. I know something like GDC is rather expensive to get out to and go to, but I ran into I can't think of his name right off the top. The guy that made Miss Pac-Man. Ran into him on a street corner. I was able to sit there and chat with him for a sec. I was getting coffee, and across from me was a guy that made Subnautica. I'm like, oh hey, my kid loves your game. I got to chat with him for a little bit. So you need to find places where people are hanging out. There's the universities usually have game programs, and I try to get to them when I can, but at the start of the year, the end of the year, they usually showcase a lot of their games that they've been making on for the year. And a lot of people from the industries will come to those just to show up as, like liaisons from their companies to chat with people. So that's a great way to go in and talk with people. It's never been easier to make games than it is now. I mean, you've got all the resources available to you. You've got a network of people you can chat with. You got, resources to develop as far as tutorials and everything all over the place. It's never been easy to just jump in and do it yourself. And so, I encourage you to take your idea that you have. Especially because it's been building in your head for years and years and years. Take that idea and just start playing with it. Start building it. You don't know where to start. Download Unity or Unreal is a great place to start. You need to figure out, I don't know how to even start building a level. Jump in that tutorial and just do it. I think I can't, the biggest thing I have is people just don't know where to start, so they don't start. The best place to start is anywhere. Anywhere is the best place to start. Just do it, and you'll find where you get hung up. You'll be like, "Oh, I'm having like right now. I would have a really hard time with some interaction between NPCs and their chatting." So I reached out to the network of people that I've met over the years. I've been in the industry for almost 20 years, so I've got a bit of a network of people. And I can be like, "Hey, I'm having a hard time with this. Can you help me out a bit?" And they'll get back with me. So again, I can't emphasize enough. It was when I was in high school, college. Like I said, that stuff just wasn't available. You really had to dig deep to try and find information you need. And sometimes you got so stuck, there's nothing you could do about it, Now is a fantastic time to jump in and just get that stuff started. So really, to meet people, you just need to get out to those game jams, jump on Discords for some of these companies that have Discords. Play around with independent. Don't just, a lot of people have their white eyes. They want to work on AAA studios, which is cool. That teach their own. We're seeing it. I'm not gonna lie, we're all seeing a crazy trend in the industry right now of job loss, and I see that maybe that AAA thing isn't the best for everyone. Indie studios, you keep your creativity, you're on tight-knit groups, you make stronger bonded relationships with people in indie studios than I feel you sometimes do those huge studios where, oh yeah, there's that guy I see, across the hall once or twice a week. I've got friends that are like that, don't get me wrong, but I think you're going to get more bang for your buck being in this studio and seeing how the process works and see every part of it and being able to get your hands dirty with different parts. There's small studios where I've been able to do some of the audio recordings myself, to help with the audio recordings because, there's only 25 people in this studio and we need, a bunch of crowd noises. And so you learn that process, which again, it goes back to just constantly be learning and learning how things go. So. I just get out there, get to those events, get to those conventions. I'm not sure where you're stationed exactly or where you're living exactly, but look for those events. They're there. There'll be game studios where we'll do job fairs and stuff like that. They'll go to like comic book conventions. Sometimes you'll see a lot of like little video game studios will pop in there. Cause we've done that before. So go out there and talk to those people, meet those people, be a face to those people. A lot of times when I've been hiring someone, I'm like, oh yeah, there's a really ambitious kid that I met that had some great ideas, kind of what he might work. And so, those people stick out in your head a lot more than the person that just kind of has their head down and it's like, here's my resume. I like video games. Don't be that person. be passionate. Be someone that's memorable. And people remember you. And you'll see people at the store like, oh, hey, what's up? And you'll chat games for a bit. So that's the best way I can tell you to get in the industry these days is just go out and
I'm a little
be person.
I love it.
Right,
I'm a little
okay.
offended by that depiction because it's exactly me sometimes. Easy D, I wanna throw my stuff on here because this is the topic I care a lot about and I talk to a lot of
Okay.
people about and I help a
Okay.
lot of students with. There's 3 things that I can tell you, and Steve pretty much said them all. But to break it down, because I know that lists help. The 3 things are this: number 1, make games. It is. I run into people now and then who are upset that I run into a lot of people, I should say, that people are upset that job descriptions for junior roles require 3 finished games. That's like the common thing that you see all the time. And I, first of all, to say this very plainly, I get that. It is really shit how difficult it is to break into this industry sometimes, and it's really shit how they expect like mid seniority level experience from somebody who's just breaking in at this point in time. But part of the reason they expect that is because of exactly what Steve said. At this point in time, it is the easiest to make games it's ever been. You can make games, and you can make it right now, and there's nothing stopping you, and you should. Get curious, get excited, have fun, do game jams. That's one of the biggest things you can do. And as much as possible, work in teams, because that way you can do just your profession on a team of people that you care about. You can practice just being a tech artist, or a level designer, or a game designer, or an engineer, or whatever, and you can build something that doesn't need to be good, you know? Like, there's the Jesse Shell quote I use all the time. Your first 10 games are going to be shit, so you might as well get them out of the way as fast as possible. It's true. Just get them out of the way. Make games. That's the number 1 tip. Like, above all else, work on games. That's going to force you to network. It's going to force you to get to know people. It's going to make you more experienced. It's going to make you more capable in interviews, etc. Number 2 is to network like a maniac, which is what Steve is talking about here. And you can do that online. You can cold call people on LinkedIn. You can go to online events. You can come to places like this, the Indie Game Academy. You can go to our classes. Literally, I'll plug this right now in the events right now. There's a class coming up that is a free introduction to Unity where you're going to make Flappy Bird. Go do stuff like that. You know, it doesn't have to be ours, anything like that. And however you can, continue to meet people, grow your network, and don't be shy about asking for help, asking for advice, asking for tips. And number 3 is to apply like crazy. If you can, hit 10 to 20 applications a week. As a junior in general, it feels like the shotgun approach works best. You can also sniper approach it, where you like go join some specific studio's Discord and really try to become a community member, really try to become known among their developers, and then use that as a way in. That's basically just networking. But yeah, that's our 3 tips. Make games, network like crazy, and then apply like a maniac.
Gotcha. Because when I was a freshman in high school, so at my first school that I attended, we had a video game design class, and the teacher she taught us how to make a game. I'm gonna be honest, I do not remember most of the steps that she taught us, and all I remember was it was some shooting game that we made.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I remember. But that is one of my many experiences that I had was back in high school. And then when I was in college, I took a intro to game design class, and I took some programming classes, and I took a digital 3D class because I had game design as my minor, because at the college that I attended, we didn't have game design as a major. So they put me on the business management track and had me on the game design minor track. And what I've been doing was looking for entry-level positions such as game tester, because game tester that is the most common entry-level position into the industry, and which I'm okay with, because when I was a kid, I was so focused on the game design process. I want to be a game designer, but I found out that's not where you start out. You start out at a tester. Cool, not a problem, because I realized that as you are a tester, and as you progress within 2 to 3 years, you develop how to level up your position inside the industry. So with me being a tester and just being with that same company or whatever the case is, I would do that. I would, work my way up to another position.
Yeah. You know what you can do? Even a tester, the place that you start is not QA, although that is one of the easier ones to break into. The place that you start is working for yourself, aka is making games with friends by yourself. That is essentially a requirement at this point in time, and it is a little bit frustrating as a gatekeeping method. But also, I frankly have there's nothing stopping you from making games. Is all I'll say. Like you can go make as many games as you want. Some of them are going to suck, and some of them are going to be amazing. That's my biggest advice. We are out of time here for the podcast, Easy D, but I encourage you to ask around in this community as well. One of the things that we've successfully done is make a space that is super friendly and hyper supportive. So ask for some advice, and you'll get it.
Gotcha. I was gonna say, would you? Would it doesn't matter which one you do it. Would one of you mind sending me this advice and this information in direct messages?
Yeah, you can ping us in the general. How about that?
That works.
All right. I'll move you back to the audience. Thank you, Easy D, for the question.
Awesome. Okay.
All right, we have gone a couple of minutes over here, Steve, and forgive me for that. Hopefully you've got nothing going on. But let's wrap it down. It's been a wonderful episode. Number one, before we go, we'd love to assign homework here. So what is something that you can advise listeners here to do within the next week? You know, they can do maybe a couple of hours that you think will help them intake some of the goodness that they learned here today.
Really go outside of your comfort zone and do something different and new. Is really my biggest thing, because again, and not tomorrow, not the next day. Try and do that today if you can. If you're at lunch right now, take a different street back home or back to the office. Play at a different park if you walk to a different park. I mean, last time I took I took a different road into home, and I saw a bald eagle, trying to chase down a hawk. I mean, it's amazing, and that's a game right there. I mean, Eagle Attack, the game where you chase down hawks. So it's like I said, inspiration can come from anywhere. So yeah, that's my biggest thing. Is I encourage you guys to get outside your comfort zone a bit, try something new, try something different, just to start building that creative library that you can draw from to add to your experiences or the things you want to build and design. So.
Love that. Awesome. All right, that's a nice, easy one. So today, I want everybody to do this homework. There's times where people assign us like a 10-hour homework assignment. This one will take you 15 minutes. So you have no excuse not to do it. You have no excuse to build your creative repertoire, your creative backlog. Go do something outside of your comfort zone. At the very least, walk a different way home today. Just be safe, please. And experience something you haven't experienced before. All right. Do you have any final words of wisdom, Steve, or anything you want to plug here at the end of the episode?
Creativity is just trying to avoid sameness. So try and be something different than what you've seen before. And as far as anything to plug, yeah, Space Gnome Studio is a studio that we're building up right now, which is we're working to help fill those gaps for independent studios and independent designers that maybe they've got the design and the art and this or that, but they need some audio or they need some economy work behind the scenes, and that's what we're trying to really build out is to help those independent gamers, because again, we see a lot of independent gamers, a lot of your audience that maybe just don't know where to jump in, or maybe just I can do all this stuff, but I don't know how to do this stuff. We want to be there for you. We want to help you out. We want to make your dreams come true, your games come true. So yeah, reach out to Space Gnome Studio, and we'll be more than happy to chat with you about that. So
amazing. So we're going to put all the links that are pertinent to the episode down in the description down below. We will definitely link to Space Gnome Studio, and we'll link to Steve Fox. Just to reiterate a final time, the lessons that we learned from Steve today, some of the lessons anyway, are to combine the things you love into something new, be an observer and experience things, set learning as a primary objective, take a notebook everywhere. I'm reading this out of my wonderful, beautiful, shiny golden notebook right now. Thank you. Love a good notebook. Get away from your project. Just go for a drive. Don't design around data. Make the game you want. And the homework assignment that we were given by Steve is simply to push yourself out of your comfort zone, experience something you have not experienced before, even just a different way home today. And then you can tag us on LinkedIn with some of the observations you learned from that, and maybe like a game idea from it. That'd be great. All right. That's going to absolutely do it. Steve, thank you for being here, my guy. This has been a fantastic episode.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I enjoy what you guys are doing over there at the Indie Game Academy. So.
Hell yeah. Awesome. Thank you. I'm glad to hear that. And thank you all for listening and for asking your questions. And as always, if you enjoyed this episode, we ask that you send it along to just one other person who is one person who would enjoy listening to Steve. All right. Goodbye. We'll see you next week, Wednesday at 12 p.m. Adios.